Enormous amount of material. I wish we had more time to search.
It has been one of the greatest pleasures of my life.
It's impossible to follow a Rick Lagina speech, so I am not going to even try.
Treasure stories on Oak Island have always fascinated people. But what was discovered in Lot 8 during Season 13, Episode 26, may be one of the most shocking developments in the island's history. This time, it's not a coin, an artifact, or another small clue. The data points towards something far bigger, a hidden underground tunnel system that some estimates suggest could be worth nearly $180 million, or around 1,500 crore rupees. What makes this discovery so surprising is where it was found. For years, Lot 8 was considered a secondary area while most attention remained focused on the famous money pit. But recent scans have revealed repeated anomalies between 90 and 110 feet below the surface. Researchers recorded resistivity differences of up to 40%, density readings several times heavier than the surrounding ground, and drilling samples that showed unusual compact layers unlike normal geological formations. According to some experts, these signals may indicate a hollow structure 20 to 30 feet wide, possibly part of a tunnel, a chamber, or even a larger engineered network hidden beneath the island. And here's where things become even more intriguing. Some researchers believe these anomalies could be connected to structures located within 100 to 150 feet of the money pit itself, raising the possibility that Oak Island's mystery is far bigger than anyone imagined. If you're fascinated by hidden treasures, ancient engineering, and the biggest mysteries ever discovered, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because what you're about to see could completely change the way we think about Oak Island. The question now is simple. If Lot 8 really contains a tunnel system worth $180 million, how large could the entire hidden network beneath Oak Island actually be? For years, digging has been going on at Oak Island. Every season brought new hope. Year after year, Oak Island has been the site of relentless digging. Every new season brought fresh clues, renewed excitement, and the possibility of finally solving one of history's greatest treasure mysteries. Yet, despite all the discoveries, nearly all attention remained fixed on a single location: the money pit. It was the heart of the search, the place where everyone believed the ultimate secret was buried. But in Season 13, Episode 26, something unexpected happened. A location that had spent years in the background suddenly stepped into the spotlight. That place was Lot 8. At first, the evidence seemed minor. A few unusual readings appeared during routine surveys. Nothing dramatic, just numbers that didn't quite match what researchers expected to see. But as more scans were conducted and the data became clearer, those strange readings started turning into a pattern. Again and again, anomalies appeared between 90 and 110 feet below the surface. This wasn't a random result. The same depth range kept showing up repeatedly. The consistency immediately caught the team's attention. Then came the measurements that changed everything. Researchers recorded resistivity differences ranging from 30 to 40% compared to surrounding areas. In simple terms, the underground material was behaving very differently from the rest of the island. Even more surprising, density scans revealed signals that were 4 to 5 times stronger than nearby soil. That raised a serious question. If it wasn't ordinary rock and soil, what exactly was hidden beneath Lot 8? After analyzing the available data, experts reached a remarkable possibility. If the anomaly represents a metal-rich structure, tunnel, or chamber, its estimated value could approach $180 million, roughly 1,500 crore rupees. And that's where the mystery deepens. Lot 8 isn't located far from the money pit. Because of its position, some researchers believe these anomalies may not be isolated at all. Instead, they could represent part of a much larger underground system stretching beneath the island. Perhaps hidden tunnels, perhaps buried chambers, or perhaps an engineered network that has remained concealed for centuries. The location that once seemed insignificant was suddenly becoming one of the most important areas on Oak Island. To understand why this shift is so important, we need to look at the money pit itself. For decades, the money pit was considered the center of the mystery. It attracted the majority of funding, equipment, and excavation efforts. Rick and Marty Lagina's team invested millions of dollars into deep drilling operations, exploratory shafts, and advanced technology because historical evidence appeared to point directly there. old wooden platforms discovered underground, stories about flood tunnels, legends of hidden treasure. Everything seemed connected to the money pit. As a result, Lot 8 rarely received the same level of attention. The area was occasionally surveyed and lightly explored, but it was never viewed as a primary target. With limited resources and endless possibilities across the island, researchers focused their efforts where they believed the strongest evidence existed. That began to change during Season 13, as new technologies such as ground-penetrating radar, resistivity mapping, and advanced data modeling were used across larger portions of the island. Lot 8 started producing results that stood out from everything else. Initially, the signals appeared weak and uncertain, but with each new scan, the patterns became harder to ignore. What shocked researchers most was that the readings from Lot 8 were beginning to look more consistent than some of the data coming from the money pit itself. The repeated anomalies between 90 and 110 feet, the significant 30 to 40% resistivity differences, the unusually heavy density readings, every indicator seemed to point toward the same conclusion. Something substantial could be hidden underground. Now the team faced an important decision. Should they continue focusing on the area that had dominated the search for years, or should they follow the strongest new evidence wherever it led? That moment transformed Lot 8 from a secondary location into one of the most critical targets on the island. Because on Oak Island, the most important rule has always been simple: follow the data. And right now, the data is pointing directly toward Lot 8. The first major clue came from the anomalies detected between 90 and 110 feet underground. Interestingly, researchers didn't discover treasure first. They discovered numbers that gradually started revealing a story. Using ground-penetrating radar, seismic surveys, and resistivity mapping, investigators identified an unusual pattern hidden beneath the surface. Across more than a dozen separate scans, anomalies repeatedly appeared within the same depth range. That consistency mattered. Natural geological formations rarely produce such precise repetition. Random soil conditions usually create scattered readings at different depths and locations. But that wasn't happening here. At Lot 8, the same layer kept appearing over and over again. Several scans showed signal variations between 25 and 35%. Others suggested abrupt density changes, almost as if a hollow space existed within otherwise solid ground. When all the results were combined, researchers outlined a possible anomaly zone approximately 20 to 30 feet wide, extending in a relatively straight line. That detail was important. The shape didn't resemble a natural cave or irregular void. Instead, it appeared more consistent with a linear structure. Drilling records added another layer to the mystery. In multiple boreholes between 95 and 105 feet deep, resistance levels changed suddenly, suggesting the drill had encountered material very different from the surrounding environment. Some samples contained tightly compacted clay and unusually dense layers that did not match nearby geological formations. Naturally, investigators began asking questions. If these features were completely natural, why were the patterns so organized? Why were they repeating with such consistency? Those questions led researchers toward a compelling possibility. Perhaps they were looking at a tunnel, perhaps a chamber, or perhaps something even larger. Because on Oak Island, when independent data sets continue telling the same story, coincidence becomes increasingly difficult to explain. Then came another surprise. The numbers weren't merely unusual, they were extreme. Detailed analysis of resistivity maps and density scans revealed some of the strongest anomalies yet. In certain locations, resistivity values differed by as much as 30 to 40%. In others, density readings appeared 4 to 5 times greater than surrounding areas. In simple terms, the underground environment was behaving as though something completely different existed beneath the surface. And that's exactly why researchers became so interested. Under normal geological conditions, resistivity variations tend to remain relatively small. A slight change in moisture content or mineral composition can easily produce differences of 5 to 10%. But a variation of 30 to 40% is far more difficult to explain. Such readings often suggest either a dramatically different material or the presence of a significant underground void. And when the density data began supporting the same conclusion, the mystery only became harder to ignore. The density readings revealed something even more unusual. Compared to the surrounding ground, certain areas appeared 4 to 5 times heavier. To put that into perspective, if normal soil represents a value of 1, these zones were registering as 4 or even 5. Results like that are often linked to metal-rich deposits, highly compact structures, or carefully layered materials hidden underground. What made the discovery even harder to dismiss was the consistency of the data. The same area showing a drop in resistivity was also producing unusually high-density readings. In other words, the scans suggested a possible empty space surrounded by much heavier material. To some experts, it looked similar to a tunnel bordered by solid structural walls. As researchers built computer models from the collected data, a clearer picture started to emerge. The anomaly appeared to form a structured zone roughly 20 to 30 feet wide, extending in a relatively straight direction. It didn't resemble the irregular shape typically associated with natural caves. Instead, it looked deliberate. And that's when the conversation changed. The focus was no longer on whether something existed underground. The new question became far more intriguing. If a structure was really there, who created it? Nature tends to produce randomness, but the data from Lot 8 was showing repetition, order, and alignment. What had started as a collection of unusual readings was beginning to resemble a defined shape. As ground-penetrating radar, seismic surveys, and density mapping were combined, investigators identified what appeared to be a continuous feature between 90 and 110 feet below the surface. The estimated width remained between 20 and 30 feet. More importantly, the signal suggested that this area wasn't behaving like solid ground. Instead, it resembled a hollow space hidden beneath the island. At first, some believed it could simply be a natural cave. But a closer examination raised doubts. Natural caves are rarely neat. Their walls are uneven, their shapes unpredictable, and their formations often irregular. The anomaly beneath Lot 8 didn't fit that description. Across multiple scans, its outline remained remarkably consistent. In several datasets, it appeared to continue in the same direction, giving the impression of a linear passage rather than a naturally formed void. That's when some experts began suggesting a different possibility. Maybe this wasn't a cave at all. Maybe it was a tunnel. The evidence became even more compelling when density spikes were detected along the outer edges of the anomaly. The center appeared hollow, while the surrounding areas registered as significantly heavier. This combination is often associated with engineered structures where a passageway exists inside reinforced walls. If natural erosion was responsible, producing such a distinct contrast would be difficult to explain. To test the anomaly further, researchers conducted additional scans from multiple angles. Yet the outcome remained remarkably consistent. The same depth, the same approximate width, the same structural pattern. At that point, it no longer felt like a random coincidence. It was beginning to look like evidence of something organized beneath the surface. And that's where the mystery becomes even more fascinating. Because if the anomaly truly represents a tunnel, then the most important question isn't what it is, it's where it leads. Throughout Oak Island's history, underground passages have rarely been viewed as destinations themselves. They are usually considered pathways leading towards something larger, something hidden, something important. And perhaps this 20 to 30 foot wide hollow zone beneath Lot 8 is only the first step toward uncovering a much bigger secret. But speculation can only go so far. On Oak Island, one principle has always remained the same. Until drilling confirms what the scans suggest, every theory remains just that, a theory. That's why the next phase of the investigation became so important. This was the stage where the ground itself would begin providing answers. Researchers drilled several boreholes directly into the depth range where the anomalies repeatedly appeared. Initially, nothing seemed unusual. The upper layers contained expected materials, loose soil, gravel, and patches of sand. But as drilling approached the target depth, the situation changed. Between approximately 95 and 105 feet, some boreholes encountered a sudden shift in resistance. It felt as though the drill had moved from one type of material into something completely different. Then came the samples. One of the first things investigators noticed was the presence of extremely compact clay layers. This wasn't ordinary clay. The material was densely compressed, almost resembling hardened cement. While clay can certainly occur naturally, finding it in such a tightly packed and uniform condition is far less common. Then another surprising detail emerged. Some recovered fragments appeared to have unusually straight edges. That immediately caught attention. Natural processes typically create irregular and uneven shapes. Straight lines and consistent edges are generally associated with human activity rather than natural erosion. Yet several pieces showed characteristics that seemed unusually structured. And the surprises didn't stop there. Some boreholes produced a mixture of materials that didn't match the surrounding geology. Samples contained compacted organic matter, traces of metallic elements, dense clay, and layered compositions unlike those found in nearby areas. Put simply, the material looked different, almost as if the layers had been intentionally arranged beneath the surface. When experts compared these samples with those collected from nearby natural zones, the differences became difficult to ignore. The texture was different, the composition was different, the overall behavior was different. As a result, the engineered structure theory gained momentum. Because nature often creates disorder, human construction creates patterns, compression, alignment, consistency. And many of those characteristics were beginning to appear within the Lot 8 data. The possibility that something had been deliberately built and concealed underground no longer seemed impossible. That naturally led to another major question. Could this structure somehow connect to the money pit? For decades, nearly every major theory surrounding Oak Island has revolved around that location. Historical discoveries, flood tunnel concepts, wooden platforms, and stories of buried treasure all seem to point back to the same area. But Lot 8 was now introducing an entirely new perspective. When researchers compared geological maps with scan alignments, they discovered that the anomaly zone sat roughly 100 to 150 feet from the money pit. Underground, that isn't an especially large distance, particularly if an engineered tunnel network exists beneath the island. Some scan interpretations even suggested a possible linear alignment between the two locations. If those interpretations are correct, Lot 8 may not be an isolated feature at all. Instead, it could represent one section of a much larger underground system, possibly even connected to the legendary flood tunnels that many believe were designed to protect whatever lies hidden below. And that brings us to the number that has generated so much excitement, $180 million. This estimate wasn't pulled out of thin air. It comes from combining several pieces of data. The density readings suggest unusually heavy material in certain areas. The scans indicate a structure potentially measuring 20 to 30 feet across and extending as much as 80 to 100 feet in length. If a significant portion of that volume contains high density or valuable material, the estimated value rises quickly. Using current gold valuations as a reference point, some projections suggest that even a partial concentration of gold-rich material could place the total worth somewhere between $150 million and $180 million. That's why some researchers aren't simply describing the anomaly as a tunnel. They're describing it as a possible treasure zone. But here's where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. If Lot 8 is truly connected to the broader money pit system, then that estimated $180 million value may represent only a fraction of what could actually be hidden beneath Oak Island. And that's exactly why many researchers believe the discovery at Lot 8 could be only the first piece of a much larger puzzle. If the anomaly is connected to a broader underground system, then we're not looking at a single tunnel. We could be looking at multiple passageways, hidden chambers, and an interconnected network stretching beneath Oak Island. In that case, what has been detected so far may represent only a small section of something far more significant. That's what makes this mystery so compelling. Are investigators standing above one isolated structure, or have they uncovered the entrance to an enormous underground complex whose true scale remains completely unknown? But as exciting as that possibility sounds, reaching the answer won't be easy. Excavation on Oak Island has never been a simple matter of digging deeper. Every move carries risk, and one mistake could jeopardize years of work. One of the greatest concerns involves the legendary flood tunnels. Historical accounts suggest that engineered channels may exist beneath the island, potentially linked to the surrounding ocean. According to some theories, disturbing the wrong area could trigger a rapid influx of seawater into an excavation shaft. Some estimates suggest these underground channels could extend 500 to 700 feet away from key search zones. If drilling accidentally breaches one of them, flooding could occur much faster than anyone expects. Another major challenge is ground stability. The depth range where the strongest anomalies have been identified, roughly 100 to 130 feet, is also one of the most difficult environments to work in. The subsurface layers contain a mixture of old excavation zones, fragmented rock, loose sediment, water influence, and disturbed soil from previous searches. Experts describe this combination as highly unstable. Aggressive excavation in such conditions could trigger a sudden collapse, damaging equipment, creating serious safety hazards, and potentially destroying valuable evidence before it can be studied. Then there is the issue of water intrusion. Because Oak Island is surrounded by seawater and contains porous underground layers, moisture can travel through the ground in unpredictable ways. Previous drilling records have already detected unusual moisture levels in some locations, suggesting that water may either be trapped underground or connected to larger pathways. If pressure is released unexpectedly, controlling the resulting flow could become extremely difficult. That's why the team isn't rushing into a major excavation. Their strategy is straightforward: understand first, dig second. Advanced monitoring systems are now playing a crucial role in the investigation. Pressure sensors, vibration monitoring, and real-time drilling analysis are being used to track every stage of the operation. Nothing is being left to chance. Every foot of progress is carefully evaluated because the margin for error is extremely small. Oak Island has already witnessed countless failed attempts throughout its history, and this time the stakes may be higher than ever. If one section of the anomaly is worth an estimated $180 million, then how valuable could the complete underground network be? Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned, because the biggest revelation in the Oak Island mystery may still be ahead. And the next discovery could change the story forever.